Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Nick Gowing. Welcome to day 3 of the Sustainable Innovation Forum, live from the Climate Action Innovation Zone here in the heart of Glasgow. We're literally a few hundred meters from COP26 and where the negotiations are still continuing. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, the host technically of the whole COP process, is returning here today to try and give it new initiative, new momentum. Certainly after President Obama said a couple of days ago, we're nothing like where we need to be and should be. This is Transport Day, technically. 40% of carbon emissions around the world come from transport. There is some reasonably good news that there is a draft agreement. Certainly, a lot of the square brackets have been removed on the principles published. This was about an hour ago. It was delayed overnight, which worried a number of people. The aim being to try to keep rises to a maximum of 1.5 degrees, as specified at Paris 6 years ago. The cover decision, as it's technically called in the COP process. But I have to say there is a new report from the Climate Action Tracker Group this morning saying nothing like enough is being done to keep it at 1.5 degrees. We'll be lucky if we get to 2.4 degrees. So that's a pretty gloomy assessment of what still needs to be done, an enormous amount here at COP26. So there you have the 4 critical themes, and we're continuing to address them as we have done for the first 2 days of this forum. Chaired by myself, Nick Gowing, and also my colleagues Maithri Sitharaman and Mark Barton. And so there's a comprehensive program for you right through the day, wherever you are, whether you're here in Glasgow or one of the 40,000 who are registered around the world. Wherever you are, we're delighted to have you with us. Let me just remind you of how you can send questions during the panels. You can do that through the app. You can do it through the app on the discussion box, and just send us your ideas, your thoughts, your questions. It's been a tremendous feedback process and has allowed us to have real conversations here and get a lot done, often in sessions which last typically about 40 minutes. You can also tweet us at Climate Action, climate_action_, or use the hashtags hashtag Climate Action Live, all one word, or SIF21 as well. A special thank you to all our partners for their support and their endorsement as well. An enormous number. We're delighted that they are supporting the whole process here at COP26 and for the Sustainable Innovation Forum. And please use this resource to meet, to connect, to engage as well, because this is about building new contacts, building a bigger community, building a new determination to act, certainly given the enormity of the science and what the science is predicting and the speed that is needed to match the science, and rather gloomy science, which is now coming from certainly expert sources, including the Potsdam Institute at the moment. So please visit the physical exhibition, please visit the virtual exhibition, make those contacts and build things forward. Right, now let's move immediately. There are the partners. You can see them up there on the screen, led by the BMW Group. You can see a good number, all of whom have been incredibly important to supporting and getting us to this point with the facilities we've got here and around the world as well. Let's get to day 3 then, immediately. We're starting, I've made clear each morning that this is, we are determined to keep to time, and our first guest is Patrick Child, who is chair of the Mission Innovation Steering Committee. And Patrick, you're joining me from across the river, I think. Welcome, and nice to see you. And we'd like to talk for the next 10 minutes about what you've achieved and what you are achieving with the Mission Innovation. You were set up in 2015 in Paris. Good morning to you. What are you achieving at the moment?
Good morning. Yeah, well, Mission Innovation is a really exciting coalition of 23 of the most active countries in clean energy research and innovation. And over the last 5 years, since the COP meeting in Paris, we've come together to mobilize significant additional publicly funded investment into research innovation in clean energy. So something like $5.8 billion a year in additional investments. And I think even more important than the amounts of money, we've also managed to stimulate a large number of collaborations, international collaborations between different countries, different research organizations, and crucially the private sector, to support projects to develop new technologies which are going to help us contribute to our climate goals. And we're at a really exciting phase in the life of Mission Innovation, because earlier this year, in a meeting of ministers hosted by Chile in June, we turned the page to a next phase in Mission Innovation, where we're trying to articulate our goals around a number of headline objectives, missions, if you like, in key sectors like hydrogen, like low-cost shipping, and low carbon shipping, and working with renewables in the power sector, with very clear objectives for 2030, so that we can really work together on a decade of innovation to support our action on climate. And here at the COP, last week in particular, we've had some exciting gatherings. Firstly, the confirmation that the United States is going to chair our next ministerial meeting next September, with very powerful support from Secretary Grantham and all her team in the Department of Energy. And it's really great to have the United States now fully engaged behind the Mission Innovation agendas. And we're announcing this week a few new headline missions on urban transitions and on carbon dioxide capture in particular, and the European Commission very pleased to be leading in particular the work on urban transition cities, and some announcements of further objectives in the future in areas like net zero industry and biorefineries. So really a lot going on, and the gathering around the COP these last few days has been a really important opportunity to underline the very direct links and the very necessary progress on clean energy innovation in relation to the wider climate agenda.
So Patrick, I mean, you are talking about significant elements of innovation which you have been charting, which you have been bringing together, where you've been engineering collaboration, but we still have this extraordinary gap, which has been highlighted by the science, which has been confirmed again by the climate action tracker this morning, that we still seem to be on target, not for 1.5 degrees, but probably for 2.4 degrees. In other words, there's still got to be a lot more innovation, a lot quicker. Is that possible?
I mean, I think that the scientists show us that there is still a credible pathway towards the 1.5 scenario, and certainly credible scenarios towards keeping well below 2%. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the clear message is that we're not yet doing enough. And that's why I think it is so important that with initiatives like Mission Innovation, mobilizing the collective strengths of the clean energy research and innovation communities around the world, that we really ramp up our efforts. And that's why I think also having within these missions that I've just presented to you, these topics that we're aiming for in areas like hydrogen, power, shipping, urban transition, and direct air capture, we have some very specific deadlines and objectives for 2030, which is a really important stepping stone on our journey to net zero in 2050. So, for example, on hydrogen, we want to have a sort of end-to-end cost of $2 hydrogen, so it becomes competitive with other uh, uh, energy sources, and reducing what Bill Gates calls the green premium on using clean technologies. We want to have a sort of 100% integration of renewables in the power sector, um, integrated into the grid. And it goes on with all our other objectives too. But you're absolutely right that the message from the COP these days is that we're making good progress, but it's not yet enough. And that's why we need to harness all our efforts in this new phase of mission innovation to take the exciting emerging technologies, which we're going to need for the full clean energy transition, from the prototype and demonstration stage into viable commercial deployment. And that really is the agenda we've set for ourselves.
Patrick, help us understand how this works. You can't just, even in the European Commission, you can't just issue an instruction, go out and innovate. Innovation takes patience, it takes wisdom, it takes enormous kind of sense of, I've got an idea, let's see how it can work. We saw what happened with COVID, with the vaccination, how that was developed in less than a year, far faster than anyone ever assumed. What is this? Is there some kind of secret to innovating, not in 10 years, but maybe 10 months, or at the speed that the science says is really necessary now, almost to save our planet?
Well, I think there are three things that public authorities like the European Commission and governments around the world can do in order to stimulate and support innovation. The first is, I think, to set a clear sense of direction, working together at a global level, but also involving stakeholders from the research community, and crucially building the private sector, businesses and private investors into the work that we're doing in order to have a clear sense of the objectives that we're aiming for. And that's where I think the missions that I've been talking about are so important. Secondly, we have opportunities as regulators, as lawmakers, to ensure that the legal frameworks in which our innovators and companies which are scaling up and exploiting the new ideas that are coming out of our innovative ideas is as clear and as innovation friendly as possible, and as agile and sort of can adapt to the fast changing situation. That's a challenge in the European Union, but we're very conscious of it and we're working on it hard. And the third thing is that we can provide funding to de-risk the development of new innovative technologies and their deployment. So, for example, in the European Union, we have with Horizon Europe one of the largest publicly funded research and innovation programs in the world. So we have 95.5 billion euros to spend in the next 7 years or so, and 35% of that will be explicitly devoted to climate action. And what we need to do also with this funding is, of course, provide direct grants and support for universities and research institutes at their upstream research activities. But we also need to find new ways of working with the private sector. Now, I'd just like to highlight something that our President, Ursula von der Leyen, launched last week at the COP with Bill Gates and the President of the European Investment Bank, a new partnership with the Breakthrough Energy Catalyst Program, which will bring $1 billion over the next few years, half funded by EU funds, half funded by private funding mobilized by this coalition of investors that Bill Gates has pulled together, specifically focused on projects in the European Union, in the European space, in order to help us maintain the technology advantages and lead that we have in many clean energy sectors, and therefore be a powerful global force in providing these solutions not only in Europe, but for the rest of the world.
Patrick, final thought. We've literally got about a minute left. Let me just ask you for example, one example, hydrogen.
Yeah.
Could there be significant developments on hydrogen, which at the moment can't yet be foreseen, but could be really game changers in the transition that we need away from hydrocarbons? Quickly, if you can.
Well, I mean, hydrogen is one of the things at the top of our agenda. And of course, I can't know the unknown, but I think that some of the new technologies that we're seeing around small scale deployable electrolyzers, and then scaling that up and using hydrogen for applications like long distance shipping, even in the aviation sector. I mean, these are some game-changing technologies that we can imagine, but don't yet see, unfortunately, in full commercial viability.
Patrick, thank you very much indeed for joining us and making time this morning at a critical moment, because it is critical, because you're saying innovation is possible, but a lot of work has got to be done. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us.